So I think you guys can hear me, yes? If you can, feel free to type in chat. Great. Okay. So today we have Ramesh Ramlal. He's a PhD computer science out of Lancaster University and a tech computer science and engineer out of Kanpur, India. He's been developing immersive virtual learning environments for diverse user groups during the past several years on platforms that include Second Life and OpenSim. And he's currently the CEO and CTO of Deep Semaphore, at e-learning and simulations solutions company. So he's going to chat with us today on how he creates very quick learning environments in the tools that he's sort of set up, and how he uses those for use cases like emergency response and other sort of civic social things. So with that, I will let you, Ramesh, if you want to take it away, and feel free to start whenever you're ready. Thanks.
Thanks, Joyce. Maybe I'll start with a little bit of information about myself. Thanks, friends. I've been a long-time user of Second Life. I probably started around 2006, and gradually we've experimented with Second Life, and we started working with OpenSim. And our current efforts are predominantly based in OpenSim now. I'll get to my talk as quickly as possible. If you have any questions, feel free to type in during the talk itself. I don't mind being interrupted. If I miss your questions, just put that on my inability to multitask. So, maybe you can let me know your questions if I miss to answer them afterwards. I'll start with the talk now, and because I don't want Joyce to keep on typing in real time. It's not an easy thing to do. So I've got my I've got my text prepared in a note card, and she will be copying and pasting the text in chat. I'll keep on talking in voice, and you might find that sometimes the conversations are not going to be exactly the same as text, but it's going to be pretty much similar. I just feel more comfortable speaking. Okay, so let's start with how to create virtual environments in minutes. These questions can appear to be a bit too ambitious, but I'll show you how we are trying to address this need. So today I will describe our ongoing journey towards this goal. I want to shed some light on our approach, which mainly centers around user virtual environment generation and virtual content direct manipulation. I am predominantly trained in human-computer interactions, so direct manipulation is a concept that came with user interfaces. So basically, you want to interact directly with your screen to make your system know to inform the system about what you want to do. So that's pretty much what I mean by direct manipulation. So by direct manipulation, I precisely mean how to change objects or their relationships with others in a virtual environment without intermediary tools. Okay, that's from a end user perspective. From a designer 3D modeler perspective, it's going to be different, because then you need tools. And we know that in Second Life, for example, we have lots of in-world tools that allow you to stretch frames, torture frames, and all kinds of stuff. But from a user perspective, you just want to do simple stuff, touch an object, click somewhere else to move it to the new location. Okay, so we use our application that is based on the approach we will describe in various domains, ranging from emergency preparedness to healthcare provider training. So Our approach is not really domain specific, so we are really looking at different vertical markets here. We're not really stuck. It's more like a generic authoring tool for users, and but with a twist. And it will become apparent as we go through the talk. You'll see how this idea evolves into others. Okay, let me go to the second slide now. So move to the next one. And to be able to piece all the concepts together, I do need to spend some time on a few basic concepts. So when I first started thinking about virtual environment generation, I started thinking about how do we divide a whole into parts, parts that can be reassembled later into other useful wholes. This is basically what happens when we talk about mashups, or reuse, or customizations, modding, modularization, and so on. Typically, this process should be accessible certainly not only to the expert programmer or designer, but also to the end user. Okay, so that's my where I'm starting from. How do we customize? So it's more a movement towards a theory of customization. Currently, it's an art. Maybe in the future we might we might actually progress towards a science of customization, and we'll know exactly how to divide a whole into parts so that the parts can be assembled more efficiently in order to produce new objects that we didn't even think would be possible in the beginning. All right, so let's move to the next slide. That's slide number 3. Okay, so that's basically the spiel I give whenever I'm trying to pitch, a certain project idea. Most businesses are interested in return on investment. It's the usual, nothing complicated here. So one business concern, of course, is to find out why this approach would be interesting from a business perspective. Let's not spend too much time here. I think the business motives, return on investment from a user perspective, are pretty obvious. I am more of a mission before profit or product ahead of marketing kind of person. So whenever I talk about this approach, is tell people, okay, you have this will allow you to customize your virtual training environments in deep ways, so that you don't need to actually go and shop around for a specific virtual learning environment to match a specific training goal. Okay, so there's kind of diversity of applications for a particular platform. Okay, so you're buying something, but you can use it for many purposes. So that's a good return on investment, I think. All right. So moving to the next slide. Okay. So going back to the idea of customization and trying to learn from existing toys that are out there. Okay. So let's check out examples we are already familiar with. As children, we have all played with Lego, Meccano, Kennext. I'm sure most of you have either bought these kits for your children, or you maybe have played with them yourself. So you have a fair idea of what building blocks are and their potential for creative assembly. So we could actually try to find out what makes them tick, what makes them work. But one of the things that I note in all these toys is that you do not typically require advanced tools to assemble the parts. Okay, it seems that somebody has spent some time sitting down and intelligently think of what are the basic building blocks going to be, and that's how you create building Kate. And we see pretty much similar evolutions in the virtual environment. Okay, so slide number 5. This construction set approach has influenced to a wide range of extents in number of efforts in the virtual environment design. Examples from the mass market products are shown in the slide. You have Minecraft, Second Life, Kerbal Space Program. There are many others, especially those that tend to focus on specific vertical markets, like corporate applications. ADMS is one. It's one that is currently used for emergency preparedness training. Basically, you drag and drop objects from a folder and create your custom virtual learning environment. Okay. So we'll have a slight change of gear here for the next 2 slides. Okay. I'm going to bring to the front 2 ideas that influenced my thinking. Okay, it might appear oblique, but please bear with me. It's quite important in terms of explaining those basic concepts. Okay, when I was a child, maybe 5, 6 years old, I was watching a Western movie. And I remember watching a painter in this movie who was painting a saloon logo using a device, which I later came to know was a pantograph. And for some reason, I was fascinated by it, and I could see that he was using, one tip of the device to make a drawing, and then the whole logo would appear on at the other end of the device, very precisely. So that was quite interesting to me. There are many other mechanical devices that allows you to create patterns. Spirographs is one example, but here we are talking about the pantograph, which is slightly different. You can use this device either to magnify a diagram, or you can even use it to make a big diagram small, very small. And you'll find this tool being used in a lot of places where you have artisans working with wood or metal, and creating nameplates and things like that. Okay. There's the main idea that came out of this experience is that I felt that the device allows you to keep functioning in your comfort zone, and it transfers your influence, your actions to a larger or smaller scale where you might not be comfortable to function. Okay, so if you're writing the saloon logo, which is a big sign, and you just need to write a small one, maybe that is limited by the reach of your hand. So you can immediately see here that there is a kind of amplification of your abilities of what you can do. And if you are designing a small, let's say, a jewel, and you want to cut a piece of wood very intricate, in a very intricate pattern, you can actually make the patterns big so that you don't make a lot of mistakes. But at the other end, you can actually see the very precise pattern emerging. And that's where you're going to have your cutting tool tip, for example. Okay, so just keep this idea in mind. It's not attached to anything yet, but just the idea you have to keep is that you are operating in a comfort zone, but you have an influence on a much larger scale elsewhere. Okay, the next slide is going to be about the Mechanical Turk. This is I thought I would use this example here to illustrate a rather simple way for creating the illusion of intelligence. So here you have the automated chess player, and it is controlled by a human that's actually hidden inside the table. And when someone is playing the chess game, they would actually feel that that the robot is intelligent. It was a hoax, and which had surprised that worked for a number of years by this guy von Kamperlen, and I think that's probably what inspired Turing for his Turing test. Similar examples include, man behind the curtain mechanism described in, the movie, the famous Wizard of Oz movie. So the idea is, could we use a similar approach to create environments that appear deeply interactive or intelligent from the perspective of a player, user, learner, or somebody being trained for something, or, if you're talking about a group of people, team training and so on. So, of course, we can have intelligent objects inside the environment, but how can we inject some human intelligence into the whole game and try to see whether that's, how far we can push this. Okay. Next slide. Okay, now we are going to start linking the pantograph mechanism idea with what we actually do in the virtual environment. Okay. So just imagine that you are on an empty sim, empty region, Second Life, OpenSim, doesn't matter. And you have a 2x2 meter board in front of you, and you get to place icons or maps on this board. Okay, so here we have a 2x2 board, like in front of you, and you're placing icons and maps and objects on it. Okay, we'll describe in more details how those icons are placed, but right now, let's look at the fundamental basics first. Every time you place an icon or object on the board, the world objects that they represent appear at appropriate locations in the large environments. Okay, and the large environment can be any size, but for now, let's say it's only a sim wide. It's like maybe 256 meters by 256 meters. Okay, actually, I started with this setup on an OpenSim region. So what we are doing here, we are placing things in a small area that's within my comfort zone, and I'm generating a world, over a larger scale. Simple idea, nothing complicated. Okay, just a linear extension of the pantograph mechanism. Okay, and let's talk a little bit about more specific icons. So let's imagine that you're placing a small hill icon on the board and a tree icon on top. Okay, and you generate like a scene with a hill and a tree precisely placed on top. So the system takes care of how they are going to orient and locate, and at what height they are going to place each other. So you can immediately infer from this that the icons are not always 2D icons. They are actually miniatures of the larger scale objects. They are just smaller. But you also have icons that don't need to be 3D miniatures. They are icons that represent, for example, crowds of non-player characters. You won't be able to have NPCs in Second Life. That's one of the reasons why we moved to OpenSim, in order to have access to its vast technology that actually does a lot of things that we need with non-player characters. So if instead of the tree we had a crowd of people, we would actually place a crowd of people on the hill. So basic example here, and let's move to the next one. Maybe I could add here that if you have a person that you place on the hill, and then you're moving the person downhill, you can select the icon on the map and move that person down, and the person in the real world, the non-player character, is going to walk down the hill to the endpoint. Okay, so it's not only just placing objects in order to generate a virtual environment, it also brings in an element of control. I'll just inject this little bit here. We're going to come to that in a moment. Next slide. Okay, so that's about the scalability of the approach. You know, so instead of considering the 256 by 256 meters for a region, we can consider regions of any size. So you can still have your 2 meter by 2 meter board in front of you, and you can imagine generating content over very, very large areas. Okay. Let me see which slide it is. Okay, slide 10. It's interesting, I didn't number my slides. I'm just scrolling up my text file here. Okay. So now we can see how this approach can scale. We can use the board as a content creation and control space. We can scale up the size of the region any number of times. And the second reason why we are using OpenSEM is because it supports variable regions. You can actually have regions of any size. So you can imagine you have your little board and you're doing some town planning task, and you put a road network, put in your buildings, etc. So you can generate a whole town on a simple surface. Okay. So the next slide will be about evaluation. So when we carried out our experiments to see, why not just drag things out of the inventory? Isn't that simple? We have a great inventory system in Second Life that everybody loves, with its thousands of objects, and so maybe we could just find those objects in and drag it on the environment and create what we want. We can just generate it that way. Why spend all that time creating this middleware interface that's going to speed up things? And well, we actually used a subjective workload assessment test called the NASA TLX, which is Task Load Index test. And I'm going to focus on one factor that is used to calculate the subjective workload experience by a user, because that was the one factor that was really very clearly that would show why our approach has got some significant advantages. What we found is that as you increase the size of the world for which you want content to be created, our approach, the advantage of our approach increases dramatically. That's because the time it takes to generate content using our board, it increases, but it increases very slowly, of course, because you're adding more objects to the board. But if you're dragging stuff out of the inventory and putting it on the regions and trying to adjust and orient your camera and trying to fly to another position where it can be raised, etc., that introduces a lot of additional tasks. And of course, all these little minutes, seconds add up, and you can see that it becomes obvious, mainly because camera control skills are really needed, and it comes into play, and you won't be able to create as rapidly what you want. In fact, when we tried creating virtual training environments, we find that it's possible to create large-scale environments within the time frame of a class. So you walk in your class, you start a theory session about emergency preparedness, let's say talking about incident command systems, and while explaining or going through your slides, you say, okay, let's create a scenario to demonstrate this. And you don't have anything, it's an empty environment, and you can actually create that within the time frame. It really takes 5-10 minutes to create a really advanced environment. Okay, so next slide. Oh, that's good. Yeah, so I apologize for just obliquely going in apparently different directions, but everything is going to come together, as you can see. So here we have, the board, and you can see that's slide 12. Is that slide 12? Yes, it is, I guess. All right. So we have a board, and we have a road network that we've placed, and we've placed mountains in the top left region, and we've placed trees around, buildings. You can even see that there's a bus on top of, the flyover road over there. You can see vehicles in the bottom right. All these have been generated through the board, and you can actually save those states as files that you can bring up later on. So if you're an instructor and you want to pre-create your scenarios and want to, in order to save time, and you're maybe somebody who doesn't want to do things on the fly, you could actually save your scenarios before the class, and during the class you just load them up, and you can have all these objects. Keep in mind that each and every of these objects are all fully interactive, of course. I mean, why shouldn't they be? The vehicles can be driven, and the buildings have got content inside. Some buildings have just got an exterior, of course, because you don't want to overload your sim too much. But there are buildings that got, that are fully detailed, and we'll get to see that in a moment. Okay, so far we've focused on content generation. Let's move to the next slide. We'll look at content control. Okay, there's one more thing. Yes, there is content control. I already talked about an example where we had, one person placed on the hill, and then you're selecting that person and moving it somewhere downhill, and the person is moving down. So that's an example of controlling through the board. The other thing that we can see is that what about visualization of activities that's happening inside the world? So now if every event happening on a world object provides information that's fed back to the icons can be animated so that you get to see what's happening, okay, in the world. You get a bird's eye view, through your board. All right. So that would be the visualization aspect. Okay. So it's Resmela. It's the first time I'm mentioning the name of the application now. Okay. So Resmela is also a virtual world control and real-time information visualization application. Okay. The information visualization part is still in the works, but the controlling part and the direct manipulation part are, pretty much complete. Okay, more examples. So that's slide number 14. Okay, so the same idea here. I have the bad habit of extending, simple ideas, and after some time, I wonder if they are not too complicated. But anyway, so that's what is the next thing is that instead of having a single board to control stuff in the environment, you have a situation where you have multiple boards controlling the environment. Okay, so that has we call them concurrent views, and if you have multiple instructors who have divided the control tasks among themselves, and they want to have a specific view, and they want to control specific aspects of the virtual scenarios. So let's say we have an emergency preparedness scenario, and you have a storm moving in, and you have non-player characters in that region, and one instructor is responsible for moving for the flow of the clouds and rain and lightning. So they are responsible of weather events, and you have another person who is going to control the movement of people, and of course when you have these two control points, you want these boards to be synced so that people know what's happening. So that the views are synced. It's only when it's synced that it's meaningful. Okay, so that's the idea for multiple concurrent views. There's a lot of information exchange that happens here, and without working in OpenSIM, we wouldn't have been able to do it. And again, I don't know. It's probably it's probably the nth reason why we are working in OpenSIM. Okay, so the next example here is just to illustrate the visualization part. Just another example, just showing, for example, if there's a lightning strike and people are hit, okay, and you can actually see in one of the views that the colors of the icons have changed, and that would represent, how many non-player characters have been hit by lightning. Just an example for illustration purposes, okay? It's not going to happen like that. You can't have, more than one people get struck by lightning, or many people in different places getting struck. I don't know about the frequency of the things, but I would expect them to be pretty rare events. That's only an example to show visualization of what's happening at the other end through the board. Okay, so the board has three functions: create content, control content, visualize what's happening with that content. Okay. All right. Trying to catch up with my text here. As I said, I'm always more comfortable speaking than writing. That's probably I rarely publish. Okay, so slide 15. Is that 16? Okay, 16. Let's use this example embodiment of the approach to anchor what we have learned so far. Okay, let me try to see here. Yes, that's my very first prototype for ResMiller. So if you look at diagram A, it's like the top view of a region, and I divided it into two spaces. Okay, you had a practice space and the theory space. The theory space was actually hidden inside a mountain. I was still influenced pretty much by the Wizard of Oz movie here, so that's how the embodiment took shape. But of course you can be create as many possible embodiments as possible. But here, the man behind the curtain, the person behind the curtain could be inside the theory space, and that's where you would have the control board, and that's where you would be having the theory classes. And if you look at the picture C, you can see that there's a classroom with chairs, and then the instructor standing in front of the board and creating the scenario and discussing, etc. And as the instructor would create the scenarios outside in practice space, the world that they are talking about would just pop up and emerge, in real time. With everything, as I said, interactive. You can have interactive vehicles, fire trucks, decontamination lines, gas leaks, and weather condition stuff, and control on all these things. You can put a crowd source somewhere, etc. It's pretty interesting to me that that OpenSIM allowed me to do all that, and in a very short period of time, really. So as a prototypical environment, it's really a great tool. There are so many platforms coming up. It's very easy to get distracted by a lot of new things coming up, where we don't actually are spending enough time talking about what's going to go in those environments. So that's precisely my interest at this time. and how they are going to be used. Of course, coming back to the example here, the instructors and the students, can actually be used to. What did I say here? I just forgot. Well, the instructors and the students could actually move from theory space to practice space through the portal. It's kind of a door that you can walk through, and you can shift between the two spaces. Diagram B simply shows the board and gives more details. If you can zoom on B, you can see on the right, you can see that there is a visual database, a browsable database of various things that you can select and put on the board. You can select them, you can delete them, move them about, and if you are putting a crowd of people, you can actually move the crowd of people, and you can start fires, make fires progress, etc. Okay, so I won't spend too much time, diving on this because it can be extended, and let's really talk about main ideas, main concepts here. So the next slide, which is slide 17, this just describes the current categories of objects that we have in our library. We have lots of plants, trees, bushes, forest, park, buildings, vehicles, equipment, etc. So you can imagine the kind of applications somebody can think of. If you are a gardener and you want to design, a landscape, you can just spend your time putting trees and flowers and water themes, and that's an example where you can actually just put things on a map and then take a stroll out in the garden and see how it feels like. But here, of course, it's emergency preparedness. Just a small example here to show that you can have diverse applications. Okay. Next slide. I'm going very well. At a pretty much. Hopefully not too fast. Okay. So next slide is slide 18. Yes, unfortunately, that's one more concept I have to talk about. It's called a malleable link set. Okay. It's just a set of frames or meshes that are linked together, but it has one important advantage. You can actually select parts of the link set and manipulate it directly, as it were. We wanted to make that simple for end users, and you will see why we do this. Let's say, for example, you have a birthday cake as an object, and you have candles as another set of objects, and you want to place candles on the cake, and you want to place 1, 2, 3, 4, any number, any design. You want to be able to do this pretty much like how you would do in the real world. You don't want to use design tools to do that. The system should be able to help you position these objects easily. And I'll give you an example, a few examples. That's basically what a malleable link set is. Okay, and the malleable link set also has a number of other properties. It can also be extended. For example, you could actually have a setup where you would increase the number of candles. So, and as soon as an extra candle is created, it gets linked to the existing link sets. So you can have link sets that can grow. You can have link sets that can shrink. But all that we want to be accessible to the user. We don't want them to right-click and to move arrows and drag, etc. We want to see what are the things that the system can take care of and really provide only what the user needs in very simple form, which is touch for selection and touch at destination to move it over there. Okay, so the next, again, simple idea, and the next slide will show the various applications. Um, a lot of thought goes into the creation of the malleable link sets. Many of the library objects are malleable link sets, and in this example, just like just imagine somebody trying to imagine what is the Lego block. The person who invented it must have spent some time thinking, okay, what is the basic structure? What is the minimal element I can come up with? Here it's kind of more abstract in the sense of, for example, we thought that for a particular task we could have a road network linked with road barriers, and you have road cones and other types of barriers, and all these are linked as a single object. Okay, so that's my malleable link set, and you can see that on the road side there are objects that describes the various types of road barriers that are available, and in this case they act like a menu. So if I were to create like the concrete barrier, I would click on that concrete barrier, and I would click anywhere on the road, and it would create a copy of that barrier on the road. So I would be able to generate any number of cones or any number of other types of barriers and place them wherever I want, and let my students move them wherever they need to. So lots of applications for traffic control and to demonstrate how these things work. And in figure C, for example, we had an application that looks at OSHA training, in this case people had to learn about the functions of the various types of tapes that are used. They are standard tapes for specific conditions. For example, if you have a broken equipment, you need to surround it with a tape of a specific color, for example. So just more examples of malleable link sets. Slide 20. Okay, so as surprising as it may appear, the table and the chairs and everything else on that object, which is in picture A, all that is one object. It's all linked. And you have cards that you can generate and place on the table, cards that you can remove. You have pieces on the board game. That by the way, was a nutrition education game. And people had to play this board game in order to learn about basic stuff about good nutrition. Hopefully I'll get some time and maybe write about this work. I'm sure there might be some interest. Then in image B, again using the concept of malleable link set, we simulated Minecraft. Not the full Minecraft, of course. You can't program these blocks, but you can actually create Minecraft-looking environments just by clicking on the blocks and clicking at a destination, and the system takes care of how to adjust and position precisely the blocks. So that's an example of an extensible malleable link set. The figure C is another example, and here instead of these having objects that are small and that you can manipulate, it's a whole classroom, and you have a slide viewer, tables, chairs, and pretty much, and you can even have non-player characters that pre-populate those objects. The same idea, but it's for a hospital, and each of these objects are maybe 500, 600 prim or mesh objects, and we really are functioning well beyond the constraint limits imposed by Second Life. That's N+1's reason why we are working in OpenSim. And then the next environment is like a house, and again in the house example we have lots of interactive objects and things in the fridge, food stuff, and non-player characters that are not in this picture frame, of course, but they are outside, and you can remove their clothes and put them in, in the bathroom, restroom, open the water flow, give them a bath, and all kinds of stuff. And we are using that for an application that's of interest to people in the healthcare domain. Okay, and yes, it's a bit like The Sims. And the last picture in this frame is, it's again using malleable link sets. We use this to create a simulation of a molecule building kit. And what I did was I used the traditional basic chemistry 101 stuff, using Archimedes solids to represent various elements, and each Archimedes solid has some angle characteristics that translate well when you create molecules and you're teaching about bond angles and lone pairs and their effect on bond angles, etc. So really a wide range of applications. I lost track of what are we now? 21? Okay, slide 21. So most examples and their advanced behaviors. More example. Okay, so here we have a bus, which is a library object, and you can pre-populate it, or you can with ampere characters, or you can just use it as a mode of transport in your region. And picture C shows that we also are able to create the library objects and inject some destructible behaviors to them, so that, for example, if you hit them with a weapon, you can also make them catch fire and get destroyed. So there's an animation system that is also in place that gives you the ability to make your objects destructible. Okay. All right. I'm happy when I see this slide, because it points towards the final few slides, and I don't need to keep on speaking and boring you. Okay, so basically, as you can see, if you have this vision, and if you try to imagine having instructors or groups of them collaborating and as people behind the curtain, and the students in the world, and trying to solve all kinds of problems that they will be throwing at them, and then in turn the students would be playing and trying to solve those problems, and the instructors will be able to see how the students are actually solving them. So there will be a kind of play that develops, that arise, between instructors and students, and that would be an interesting, hopefully engaging way of teaching. But that's one view. Okay, a funny view, but I think I just thought I would mention it. All right, let's move to the next slide. Okay. Well, there is the reason why I'm putting up this slide here, revisiting the Wizard of Oz experiment, is because again, that's a fairly well-known concept in human-computer interaction. Okay. Wizard of Oz experiment is a research experiment in which subjects interact with a computer system that subjects believe to be autonomous, but which is actually being operated or partially operated by an unseen human being. The reason why I mentioned this is because when the students are in the virtual environment interacting with all the objects that you have deployed, and they are interacting and with a live environment, as it were, that's being controlled by instructors. Of course, it would appear that the environment is actually intelligent, and you'll find that I'm trying, I move on to the next slide to try to explain how the target keeps moving, okay? So as we learn more and more about how facilitators are interacting with virtual learning environments, we start discovering new opportunities for automation, okay? So, for example, if we find that an instructor is having to move crowds away from a fire manually too often, then we'll have to implement in the system, make the NPCs more intelligent so that they will actually move away from the fire sources along some predefined path. So by automating this task, we free the instructor to be doing something else that might be more creative. Basically, as we keep on interacting in the virtual environment, we keep learning, and this has already happened. And there are many instances where we find that things that we were doing manually, such as fire propagation, for example, can actually be automated, so that you don't need to actually have to be there all the time to control each and everything that's happening in your environment. So that's basically what this graph shows, and what we see is that the percentage of world objects with pre-programmed autonomous responses, that's going to increase over time, and the percentage of situations that would require manual interventions, that would actually go down, okay? And that's, that describes the trajectory of where we are going, okay? So what's the next slide? Summary and conclusion. Yes, that's the usual slide for, just to demonstrate how we hope to increase return on investment. It's because there's a lot of reuse that happens in our environment, and customization is real-time and user-driven, okay? And we're really trying to make all customization happen through direct manipulation, really moving towards a zero scripting environment. Okay. So basically, you sell a product to somebody and say, okay, you're interested. At least the way it is right now, when we see when we see like a specific vertical market, we develop libraries that would actually fit for that specific vertical market, okay? Yes, thanks Serene for those snapshots. You can actually see a lot of video clips as well on the resmela.com site if you try to browse the video clips. And the current status of the work, it's ongoing, and we are pretty much progressing. And so we'll keep you guys posted as we keep on improving. So I think that's pretty much the end of my talk. And if you have any questions, let me try to see. I'm still clicking on the cloud here. Oh yes, and if you're interested in getting demonstrations of these things that I'm doing, just send me an email and I organize a tour for you guys. And I'm currently on Kitely, and that's my email address. Just send me an email and I'll create a list of people I'll get back to, and you can actually see what we've been doing. Thanks, Franz.
Thank you, Ramesh. I think you can hear me. Thanks for this. I mean, I think this is a super useful thing, I think, especially for folks who aren't say as script or build focused, that it would allow them still to create all these simulations. So
All right.
so
Yeah.
so let's wrap. Let's thank Ramesh, and then let's we can kind of do a really quick open mic, and then we can wrap for the week. Thank you, Ramesh. Again.
All right. So I'm going to mute myself, okay?